Lighten up.
Yep.
I'm Dave Palumbo, founder of Species Nutrition. From my earliest bodybuilding days, I believed in only putting the best in my body. And that lives on in the Species Nutrition line of products. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
Hey guys, we're super excited to be here at the LA Fit Expo. It's our third year in a row. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be launching the Tasty Pastry. It's a low-carb Pop-Tart. It's got 3 to 4 grams of net carbs. And we love this show. This is our best place to be in LA.
Hey, this is the Game Triple H from the WWE. You're watching RxMuscle.com, the truth in bodybuilding.
RX Television on RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave. Your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. Whatever's on your mind, bodybuilding, non-bodybuilding, it is all on the tables. Now bringing Dave Palumbo. Dave, yesterday's episode of After Hours, one of those, and this is what I think people enjoy most about the show. Obviously, you know, over the last couple of months, we had some hilarity that ensued, but the core essence of the show is that between John Romano, between Greg Valentino, just that core right there. I mean, you guys have stories to tell for the last 25 years and everything that has taken place in the bodybuilding world, everything that has taken place, as we discussed yesterday on the episode, in the supplement industry. So much stuff that I feel like people don't know about what truly went on during that period of time in the supplement industry. I'm talking about supplements as in what you see in your local GNC and the other supplements and all that, you know, went on in you know, back in the 80s and 90s, and how vastly different it is from then to today. So I thought yesterday's episode was a real eye-opener in that regard.
Yeah, I think people will enjoy it, especially maybe the younger guys who don't really know the history of how the supplement industry came about and how people started to learn about anabolics. Because, you know, back in the 90s, there was, especially the beginning of the 90s when I kind of really got into it, there was no information about like anabolics. There was no, I mean, the internet hadn't even started yet. So the only, and there was no books and no one talked about anabolics in magazines at all. And they're really, most of the supplements really, to be honest with you, sucked. They didn't really work. They were just kind of like skim milk powder with the sugar in them. And, you know, there was some multivitamins and stuff like that, but there really wasn't anything out there. And then really all of a sudden it was like the heyday of supplementation. And Bill Phillips started out by writing, you know, this anabolic reference guide, and Dan Duchesne had written the Underground Steroid Handbook, but Bill Phillips was really the one to first commercialize it. And everyone was reading anything this guy wrote, you would read. And he would just put out a newsletter every month. And then he introduced the world to Metrex, which was really the first engineered protein drink. And then he brought creatine to the marketplace. So all these things happened like in the early 90s. And the only place you get information was through his magazine. And he was the first person to actually say, you know what? All the stuff out there is crap. I'm going to test it in a lab and prove to you guys that it's crap. And he did. And he exposed a lot of supplement companies that were putting out like sugar. There was companies putting out protein powders that were just sugar and there was like no protein in them. And no one knew because there was no one regulating this stuff. And Phillips exposed all these people. So it's an interesting, history of how that all happened. And, you know, maybe at some point in the future, we can get Bill Phillips on for an interview. I've always been trying to interview him over the years, and he's kind of was very reclusive. I interviewed Sean Phillips, his brother, several years back. It was a great interview. But Bill, I noticed, has been on social media now ever since he got COVID, and he had almost died from it, and he was on a ventilator for like 30 days, something like that. So I'd love to get him on and talk about that. I think people would really find it interesting. Because a lot of people just don't know where anything came from because people are so new to the sport that they don't know the history of the sport, you know, or the history of supplementation, which to me is more interesting even than the history of bodybuilding itself.
Well, I mean, if for those, you know, that grew up over the course of the last 20 years, I mean, you remember just what it was going into, you know, your local supplement store and you saw the same, again, what they call now the legacy brands. I mean, there's such history behind those legacy brands and how they came to be and, you know, the genesis behind them. So again, if you haven't already seen that episode of After Hours, check it out. Real golden information that you have in the show. So check it out. Of course, all new episode of Heavy Muscle Radio. We did a full breakdown of the Toronto Pro, even got the show winner, Mo Shaban, to join us for a few minutes. So that was really informative, really insightful as well. Finished 10th at last year's Olympia, and someone that people think, again, depending on the right circumstances, could possibly move a couple of spots this upcoming Olympia. Impressive showings last week, a couple of weeks ago, Cal Pro, right? So when he finished second to Charles Griffin?
Yep.
Yeah, Cal Pro. And then, of course,
2 weeks earlier,
winning in Toronto. Let's go to the questions. The first two questions, of course, from the Dave Palumbo Experience App. The first question, Dave, your opinion about taking clen and T3 off season to avoid the excess of fat at the end of the cycle. I'm not quite sure what he means here, 6 to 4 weeks. So let's just take the first part of the question.
I know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
He wants to know the 6 to 8 weeks that he's going to be off cycle. Should he take clenbuterol and T3? And, if you just came off a show cycle, you certainly wouldn't take those because because you just used them ostensibly, to get in contest shape. So you want to give your body a break from those. If you just came off an off season and you're coming off, you theoretically could, but you know what? I always tell people, either grow or get lean. Don't try to do both at the same time or you'll fail miserably at doing both. Okay? Pick one or the other. If you're too fat and you have excessive body fat on your body, then diet down and lose some of the fat. If you're just, looking a little off-season-ish, but you're not carrying, globs of fat on your waist, then do an off-season and grow. And then you can diet for your contest or for your photo shoot or for the beach or for the vacation, whatever you want after that. Don't try to do two things at the same time. So don't try to bulk while taking clenbuterol and T3 because you're going to cut into your gains because now you're amping your metabolism and you're going to use up resources more. You're not going to have those resources available to build and repair muscle. So you got to pick one or the other if you want to accomplish either one of them very well.
Second question, again, from the Dave Palumbo Experience App. Interesting one here because I know you obviously look, when we talk about fiber and how you realize the benefits of fiber during the progression of your career. And obviously now you're one of the biggest advocates of fiber and fiber lies being a core element of the species nutrition line of supplementation. The question is about colonics. Obviously, I guess the irrigation process that takes place during colonics procedure. Do you feel like that is a recommended procedure before a show if you feel somewhat backed up?
I tried getting a colonic once. I got a colonic once, and you feel empty right afterwards. But I'll tell you what's happening is, and this was before I was into fiber. I didn't know about fiber. I was still in my discovery phase, and then I discovered fiber, and I realized I didn't need a colonic. Okay, the problem with colonics is they wipe out all the good bacteria in your colon a lot of times. I know they try to give you a probiotic drink afterwards to try to repopulate, but it's extreme. You're pumping up, hot water up your butt essentially to get into your colon to try to wash out the impacted or any kind of like fecal matter that may be retained in there. If you take a fiber supplement, a high potency fiber supplement like Fiberlize, twice a day, every day, you're constantly cleaning your colon all the time. You're flushing. So after a while, there shouldn't be anything in there left that you have to stick, something up there to flush out. And that's the key. The key is you don't get a colonic, once every 3-4 months or every 6 months. You use something that's constantly removing waste efficiently from your body all the time, daily. You should be doing your daily. Fiber is like a daily colonic. You're constantly pushing waste out of your body. And you know what? If you use fiber long enough, if you do have any impacted stuff in there or stuff that's been hanging around too long, eventually that stuff will get flushed out as well. And it's almost like power washing your house. You're power washing your colon, but on a daily basis, twice a day. And that's the key. It's about regularity. You can't try to. It's like the guy who eats crappy and smokes cigarettes his whole life and then gets coronary artery disease and wants to take a pill to get rid of all the blockages. It doesn't happen. You can't get rid of it. The trick is don't let it build up in the first place. The good thing about fiber is that even if you have a buildup in your colon, eventually that will all flush out on a regular basis. And that's why I tell people especially when they do my 3-week detox, a lot of times they have the most insane looking bowel movements that they've ever seen. It's because their body's flushing toxins out that have been in there for a long time. Same thing with fiber. When you first start a fiber supplement, you're going to be going to the bathroom. You're going to see weird stuff coming out of your body because it's probably been stuck in there for who knows how long. The key is nothing extreme. It's a process. You don't try to play catch up the day before a show. I'm going to get a colonic and fix everything that's been wrong with me for the last 10 years. It's not going to happen. And you know what? I always tell people too, because Tony Freeman was a big advocate of colonics, but he did colonics all the time. So his body was used to it. He can go for a colonic and then the next day compete. If you go for a colonic and you've never had one, you're risking now something going wrong. You could retain fluid. You can get, maybe your colon gets irritated and your belly is a little distended, not necessarily from stuff in the belly, but from the inflammation of the process that you went through. So never do something that you don't do normally right before a show. That's usually bad advice. Now, I just want to remind people, once again, the Dave Palumbo Experience app, you can download to your from iTunes Store or Android Store. It's $29 a month. You get access to me, basically 24 hours a day, all my videos I've ever done, all my writings that I've ever written, a workout a week we put up there. I do a special Q&A video on the app, and I also answer everyone's questions in an open forum, so everyone gets to see all the questions, all the answers. It's like having me in your coat pocket, essentially, as your coach. And I've noticed over the last couple of weeks, we've had a lot of people joining the app, and I've got a lot of great feedback from it. So thank you guys for supporting that app, and I'll keep putting out the great information every week that we do, because you guys are appreciating it.
Let's go to our Instagram question. Again, if you're not already following us on Instagram, the handle is official_RxMuscle. If you're watching us for the first time here on YouTube, welcome. We ask that you subscribe below, hit the notification bell if you're not going to miss any of our show segments or updates. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button, comment below, and as always, we appreciate all of your support. First question from LP II. Again, we talked about yesterday's episode of After Hours, where you did a deep dive into the supplement industry, the history, and some of the untold stories of the supplement industry. So he wants to know what supplements bring back some nostalgia for you, supplements that may be banned, discontinued, outdated.
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, GHB, which was sold as GBL, gamma butyrolactone, which is we used it as a sleep product. You used to be able to go into a health food store and just buy a jug of the stuff and you just drink it, and before you go to bed, and that's what everyone used it for. Then people realized that you actually can get a buzz or a little high from it, and so people started using it for going out and partying, and they were mixing it with alcohol, which is a no-no because then people pass out from it, and then it became banned. And then people were selling precursors to the precursor, and then that got banned. So I remember literally, Jimmy Pellecci, the Bull, Iron Bull, had his own supplement store. He had 2 stores, actually, and I used to go in there and he used to have it right on the shelf there. It was great. And I think it was like one of his best sellers. So that was legal. I remember when I first started selling, one of the first incarnations of my lipolyzed fat burn, we used to be able to put T2 in it, which was a metabolite of T3, which is thyroid hormone. It was the fat burning component of thyroid hormone, and it was legally able to be put into supplements. I had it in lipolyzer. It would work great, the stuff. I loved it. Everyone loved the product, and then they pulled that from the market. They made that. Anytime something worked, they pulled it off the market. And over the years, I've seen it happen like 5, 6, 7, 8 times in recent memory, where really good supplements were just yanked off the market because they just weren't. Matter of fact, pro hormones were legal when they first came out. Patrick Arnold figured out, hey, if I can synthesize androstenedione, which is a precursor to testosterone, and sell the androstenedione because that's not an illegal drug, you could take that and raise your testosterone level. And then there were all the different metabolites of that, and those were big in the 90s. Everyone was selling those. And then, people went on to actually start selling real steroids that were just never, labeled, or I should not say labeled. They were never classified as prescription drugs. And that's, that in the last couple of years, that was finally, food and made illegal. But in the heyday, when they first started, it was like, oh, who can come up with the next great thing? Patrick was like in his lab just mixing things up and coming up with new incarnations of these pro hormones. They had 19 androstenedione, I think it was called, and yeah, that one was better because it didn't convert to estrogen, and there was a whole host of really good products back in the I would say mid to late 90s that came out like that. Obviously, creatine was one of the supplements that came out that really worked and is still around. And you know why it's still so popular, even though because a lot of times supplements go in and out of fads, is because creatine really worked. It did give you better pumps, did give you better endurance, and that's why people still use it to this day. And so that was one supplement that actually stood the test of the FDA, and the FDA didn't pull it off. But there were a lot of stuff out there that was like, it was the Wild West back in the beginning, and I think a lot of companies were, and I should say a lot, there were a few companies that were actually putting anabolic steroids into some of their products. At least rumor has it. And those products, eventually got yanked, but they were out there. And that, like I said, that would never happen today. Well, maybe it did happen today recently, but by and far, you're not seeing it on a very large scale basis where people are putting in steroids into protein powders, because the ramifications are just, too bad at this point. We did see Viagra in a few products get pulled probably within the last 5 years, but as far as I'm concerned, I think back in the day, I would say the GBL and GHB products were probably the most, almost when I look back, I can't believe they were actually legally sold in health food stores, but they were.
Second question from Akshay Pandey. With the term old wives' tale, so he's from India, me being Pakistani, of course, we do hear a lot of misconceptions, and I think a lot of people from that region are going to relate to this question, because in that region, when it comes to supplementation, when it comes to bodybuilding in general, like a lot of things are just considered to be unhealthy. So specifically, he mentions creatine, saying that one is that you cannot use creatine more than 2 months. And if you want to use creatine more than 2 months and 2 months off, if you can take it continuously, you will suffer kidney stones. And anybody that has kidney stones shouldn't be using creatine. So in your opinion, prolonged use of creatine, will it lead to kidney stones?
No, creatine is not really it doesn't really cause stone formation. If you have weak kidneys, if the kidneys are not functioning properly, or if you're in a dehydrated state, you don't want to take creatine, because the kidneys do have to flush the extra creatine as creatinine waste product out of the body. So, you always want to be well hydrated when you're taking creatine, which you would want to do anyway, because creatine goes into the muscles and pulls fluid with it, which hydrates the muscle cell, or volumizes the muscle cell. So you would not want to take creatine. Like if you're getting ready for a show, I always have people stop at 2 weeks out, but you don't want to take creatine before you go on stage, because you're completely dehydrated, and it's like pushing sand through your kidneys. You don't want to do that. That could damage the kidneys. But assuming you're in a well hydrated state, creatine poses no risk of damaging the kidneys long term. It can be taken every single day. It's not a big deal. However, if you have compromised kidney function because you had high blood pressure or something else is going on in your body, you wouldn't want to add the extra stress on the kidneys to have to flush that stuff out. And that's really what it is. So it's not that the creatine causes damage, but if you have damaged kidneys that don't function at full efficiency, you wouldn't want to put more of a burden on them to do, just like you wouldn't want to eat a super high protein diet if you have damaged kidneys. It's not that protein damages the kidneys, it's just going to make the kidneys have to work harder. So if the kidneys are not working at maximum efficiency, you want to take the burden off of them a little bit by removing protein, creatine, stuff that the kidney has to do, which would increase its workload.
Hardcore Dan wants to know, does the body use net carbs for fuel? Say something has 50 grams of carbs and it says 10 net carbs.
Yeah, the only carbs that the body can use as a fuel source would be net carbs. So when you look at it, and like I said, I have been saying this for 2 years now. I have to put out this course on how to read food labels. I have actually the food labels collected, and I got to pull the trigger on it, because I think a lot of people don't know how to read a food label. It's great to see how many grams of carbs, fat, and protein and calories are in a food, but that part of the panel is really not that important. The most important part of the panel, believe it or not, is the ingredient list, because the ingredient list, they can't lie. So if it says sugar or dextrose or molasses or hydrogenated soybean oil, which is just trans fat, it'll be on that label. You'll know what to avoid, and what to stay away from. So, I lost my train of thought. What was the original question, Sid? No, net carbs. Sorry. I got it.
Yeah, net carbs.
I'm pontificating too much.
Net carbs.
Yeah. So when you look at a label, okay, in the food on the panel, and it says total carbohydrates, say 30 grams. that's not the true number of what you need to be concerned with, because you have to subtract off any fiber, because people forget that fiber is a carb, but it's an unabsorbable carb. So if the product has 30 total carbs and 5 grams of those are fiber, then it only has 25 net carbs, meaning that those 25 grams of carbs are what you can absorb. The other 5 grams will just be eliminated from the body without absorption. And that's what's important. So net carbs is the most important thing when you're calculating the carbohydrates that you're consuming on a regular basis. So if I'm eating, like they have these high fiber like wraps and breads nowadays, and they have, 35, 40 grams of carbs, but a lot of times it's like 27 grams of fiber in there. So you're only absorbing like 10 or 12 grams of carbs. That's a lot lower than a normal piece of Wonder Bread would be, say. So you have to figure what the net carbs are, and the only way you can do that, and I don't know why they don't just make you do it on the label. They should just say how many net carbs in there, but they don't. You have to subtract the fiber from the total carbs.
Let's go to Carlos Fit NYC. Brings up George Farah in particular. I guess I'm not sure exactly. On another podcast said that high protein is not good and can cause cancer. Your thoughts?
I mean, as a blanket statement, it sounds ridiculous. If you qualify it, maybe in the case of someone who's got cancer or someone who has a high acidity in their body and their bodies, maybe their kidneys are not functioning at maximum efficiency, I would, a high protein diet probably is not good for you, in a sense that it's forcing your body to have to really try to deaminate all this extra protein. Maybe you're not utilizing a lot of it. It's lowering the acidity, or raising the acidity, I should say, in the body, lowering the pH. And that's going to, create an environment that's conducive to cancer growth. But I don't think eating high protein in and of itself causes cancer, because otherwise there would be a lot of bodybuilders out there with a lot of cancer, because I don't know any population or any portion of the population that eats more protein than bodybuilders do. I mean, the average 250-pound guy probably eats 400 grams of protein a day. That's a very high protein diet, and I don't see anyone dropping dead of cancer. So I didn't hear the interview, so I don't know if he was giving that advice in the context of something else he was talking about, because a lot of people take people out of context, but if he was just making it as a blanket statement, that's not true.
Neil Zalewski, which peptide have you seen best work with injuries, TB500 or BPC 157?
People are always asking me about this, and you know what? People always ask me, hey Dave, should I try BPC 157 or for helping to heal my tendon injury or my ligament injury or my muscle injury? All those healing peptides, I noticed that some people get better results with them than other people. And I don't know if that's just psychological. I don't know if it's because it's injury specific, meaning certain injuries respond better than other injuries. Because what happens is people try to apply these healing peptides to all injuries. And I think that they work better on certain ones and not as well on other ones. And which ones those are, I don't know. So does it hurt to try to run a course of that stuff? I'd run both of them if you really, just to play it, safe, because you don't know which one would be more specific towards your injury. And I don't think anyone has really quantified that. Now, I know TitanMedicalCenter.com, our good friends over there, sell a pharmaceutical grade version of BPC 157. You can call them up and it'll actually be shipped from a pharmacy. It's not like you're buying it from the black market or the gray market. That if I was, going to use something, that's where I would get it from. And I have gotten from them in the past. Now, I was trying it when I had my shoulders, before I had my shoulder, surgery, and my shoulders were just completely arthritic. There was no cartilage left. So, of course, I'm not going to really get any relief from that. I think these healing peptides work well on minor injuries. Like, you pull something in the gym and you want to increase the rate with which you heal, and you take them. I don't think that they work well on people who are arthritic in their joint and are like this close to getting, joint replacement, because, they're trying to find anything that's going to possibly help them before they actually have to go and get a knee replacement or a hip replacement. I think at that point it's too far gone. They work on minor injuries. That's my experience, at least with other people that I know who use them and on a regular basis. Most people don't get that many good results, but people who have, like I said, they pull a muscle in the gym, maybe they pop a few fibers of their pec, they seem to heal a little faster. But these people are also on GH, they're on testosterone, so who knows what's really making the stuff heal faster. But at the end of the day, they're cheap enough that, you know what, if you have a bad injury, it doesn't hurt to try. Usually the dosage is around 400 micrograms of either one of the healing peptides per day for like usually 2 or 3 weeks in a row, and then you can go to kind of like once or twice a week.
Interesting one here from good friend Bilal Hamide. Sweating versus not sweating in workouts, is it an indicator? As gyms in Dubai are normally air conditioned and cold, and then he mentions, I guess, the opposite, say in Lebanon, where gyms are typically hot and steamy.
Well, if there's no air conditioning, you're going to sweat. I mean, even I don't sweat much in the gym at all. But if I go to Metroflex, Brian Dobson's gym in Texas, in the middle of the summer, I'm going to sweat my ass off in that gym because it's hot in there. That Texas heat is hot, and it gets humid in there, and you will sweat. So does sweating mean you're burning more fat or less fat or building more muscle or less muscle? No. Sweating is a mechanism that your body has to cool itself. So if there's air conditioning in the gym and you're being cooled with the air conditioning in the gym, your body doesn't have to sweat as much. If you're training in a warm place that doesn't have air conditioning and it's very hot outside, your body's going to have to sweat to cool itself more. And that's just the way it goes. Believe it or not, you actually burn more calories when it's cold and your body has to heat itself up than when your body has to cool itself and it has to sweat. That's a little probably useless fact that's irrelevant, but Chris Aceto likes to tell me the story that Serge Nubret, when he would train, he would, in the middle of the winter, he would go outside. He would leave the gym, which was warm, in the middle of sets and go outside in the freezing cold because he felt like the shivering from the outside would burn more body fat. Now, whether that worked or not, I don't know. But yeah, it doesn't really matter. There's no reason to sweat unnecessarily. It's not going to make you have a better workout or build more muscle.
Let's go to Sarge at Arms. What do you think the benefits are of adding 2 units of GH in the morning and before bed when added to it says in his own words, mild cycle for someone in their 50s?
I think it's a lot. I think 4 IUs per day for a 50-year-old guy is probably too much. I think if you're doing it for longevity purposes and just to feel good and look good, probably 2 IUs per day is enough in the morning, with breakfast. I don't like to take GH at night. I always found it kept me awake, but more so than anything is your body naturally releases GH at night. So if you're going to take a shot of GH before you go to bed, you might actually blunt your own natural production. Now, granted, the GH you're taking is probably way more than what your body would naturally produce, but why not just take the GH when your body doesn't naturally produce GH, which would be the morning hours, even mid-afternoon. The times that your body really cranks GH is at night and after high intensity like type training session. Your body will release it obviously for repair purposes. So those are the times you really don't need to take the GH. That you want to take it when your body is the most catabolic, like I said, which is earlier in the day.
Let's go to Carlos Fit again. Your thoughts on Hunter Labrada saying on one of his videos, he has mostly shakes with Rice Krispies, about 4, and blends his chicken to drink it. He goes on to say that he seems to have digestion problems, but that is I would imagine even in your experience, it's a fairly common practice. I guess one is the blending chicken part, and then the other is adding Rice Krispies to his shakes.
Hunter has a very, very fast metabolism. I've interviewed him. We've talked about this, him and I. And he doesn't like to eat huge, huge volumes of food because he feels like it might affect his waistline. But if he doesn't get the density of calories in, then he literally disappears. That's how fast his metabolism. And it's a conundrum a lot of bodybuilders face. I face that. I think probably my waistline suffered because I had to eat so much food, and I always had a full stomach of food. I didn't eat an astronomical amount of food. And even when I was pouring shakes down my throat, and I could never do the blended chicken or tuna. It was really just too gross for me. It wasn't that I couldn't swallow it. It just was, I'd rather eat the food. I did blend eggs and oatmeal, though, a lot of times. He uses Rice Krispies. He could probably eat literally like a whole box of cereal and probably gain no fat from that, you know what I mean? Because he just has that fast of a metabolism. That doesn't mean that the average guy watching this should go out there and do that, because you'll probably get fat from eating a sugared cereal, if you're blending Rice Krispies into your protein shakes, there's better quality, carbs that you can put into your shakes. from fruit to, high molecular weight carbs like Carbolyze or Vitargo. I wouldn't necessarily be doing that, but he's a genetic freak. He's got a ton of muscle. He's an Olympia level competitor with a gifted metabolism and gifted physique. So you don't necessarily want to copy what Hunter does because it probably won't work for you. But I understand why he's doing it. Now, I don't know why he can't eat any food, but a lot of times, and I've done videos on this, I explain to people think it's easy. Oh, I can't wait till the off season where I can eat. It's so much better than dieting. I got news for you. It's a lot easier to eat diet food, okay, and suffer a little bit with hunger than it is to try to eat when you're not hungry in the off season, because most people fail. Most people, if they're not hungry and they just say, oh, I feel like I just ate like 10 minutes ago and I got to eat again, they'll just skip the meal. I never skipped a meal. If I had to force the stuff down, if I had to swallow a fish whole, I would do it. There was no chance I wasn't skipping, and that's very, very hard to do. Eat when you're not hungry, but that's what it takes a lot of times to build massive amounts of muscle. So Hunter came up with his own system. If he can blend the stuff and drink it and can get it down and stomach it and not throw it back up, then you know what? I say go for it. If that's something you guys want to do, that's fine. I think though that once you stop chewing, the act of chewing is actually pleasurable, and I think when you're drinking everything, you start like pooping toothpaste. It comes out of you too fast. It almost goes through your system too fast. It's almost like your body needs to have that time to digest the food to be able to assimilate it. If it goes through too quickly because it's already kind of almost like mush when you're eating it, I think it just goes through your system too fast, and a lot of times you have malabsorption of the food too. I would find that when I would do the egg shakes, I would put 12 whole eggs in a blender with oatmeal and apple juice and a scoop of, and sometimes a packet of Metrics with that, and I felt like it maybe went through me too fast because it's like my body didn't have to digest it, and maybe I wasn't extracting all the nutrition out of it, and that's what I always worried about too. So think about it. You know what I mean? Don't try not to do too many shakes. If you have to do one meal like that a day, I think that's okay. If you're going to do every meal like that, I think you're going to have a problem.
Take a couple more questions, bodybuilding and wrestling. Dave, last week you mentioned about when it's time to go home after each workout. What would you consider a good number of sets for each body part? All sets pretty hard to failure.
I hate this is like a homework assignment for me. Everyone's different, for big body parts.
What did you do in your career?
I don't. For big body parts like back and legs, I probably did 12 to 15 sets. Shoulders probably around 10 to 12 sets. Chest, I would do like 8 or 9 sets. For biceps and triceps, I would probably triceps I did more. Triceps I would do 8 sets. Biceps I would do 6 or 7 sets. And what did I leave out? I think that's it. Yeah, and I mean and I would make those sets count, obviously. And people are like, oh, what about the warm-ups? I said that includes warm-ups. So in other words, if I'm going to an incline bench press, okay, I'm going to have to obviously you would start with 1 plate on each side, 135, 225, 315, 405. I would bang out 6 reps of 405, and that's on to the next exercise. Now I'm warmed up. I'm going incline dumbbell presses. I'm going to go to the 130s and then the 140s. And next exercise, now I'm going to flies. Okay, so I'm going to do 2 sets of flies with heaviest set, and then that's it. So there's 4, 6, 8, and then maybe I'll do 1 finishing movement or something like that, like 1 set of cable crossovers. There's my 8 or 9 sets for chest. But I made those sets count. When I was doing my 405 on the incline bench, okay, I was doing 6 reps, and man, I couldn't do another rep after that, and my chest was fried after that. I felt like I could go home after that, and that was only the 4th set I did. So you got to make the sets count. Lift as heavy as you can. Good form, full range of motion. And you know what? You're going to see great results. That's how I did it. Other people like doing more volume, so I don't say one way is better than the other. I just know what worked for my body because I had a very fast metabolism.
Last question from Soren Popa. Who was the most conditioned Mr. Olympia of all time?
That's a hard question because all of them were really, really well conditioned. I mean, Dorian might have been the freakiest, in terms of graininess and striations and stuff like that. But Ronnie was pretty freaky too. In 98, 99, he was ridiculous. I would just say Dorian just because Dorian was like granite. He probably could have competed 10 to 15 pounds heavier than he used to, but he would come in so hard and so dry, and the only way you can get a true appreciation for it would be to be there in that theater with him and to see him on stage in person, because video, and pictures just don't capture how hard he was. So I would probably go like I said, I would go with Dorian on that one. But you know what? Dexter Jackson won the Mr. Olympia, and he was pretty shredded too when he won that year. But I would say on a regular basis, Dorian, of the guys who won multiple Olympias, I would go with Dorian Yates.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Reminder again, if you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss any of our shows, segments, or updates. Sunday night live episode of Heavy Muscle Radio. Right now on the channel, all new episodes of the Heavy Muscle Radio show after hours. And then, of course, later on in the week, we're going to have an all-new episode of Iron Rage with Lee Priest Lee, now back in Australia. For Tyler Shore and Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next week.